House of the Dragon episode 10, the season finale, the real season finale.
Mhm.
HBO, they took a risk, I guess, investing a lot of money into some talent to bring a new show from the Game of Thrones, from George R. R. Martin's world back onto the screen after a
Mhm.
universally lambasted season finale to Game of Thrones. And yeah, we'll talk episode 10 specifically, and then of course overall thoughts for the season as well. Um, Episode 10 starting out, I should say episode 9 ending with the quick um swearing in, oathing in of a new
The
king.
quick crowning ceremony.
Yeah, yeah, of a new and one would think illegitimate king.
Mm.
And we get now the to see the other side, how this news spreads, of course, to Rhaenyra and Damon. So
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching the post-show, summary and discussion, and, the creators were talking about how, like, 9 and 10 are really sister episodes because it's the same incident, Viserys passing away, um, but, just viewed from 2 completely different sides, and I kind of wish I would have been able to watch 9 and 10 kind of back to back. Just to kind of, like,
right.
get a feel for that, like,
Yeah.
mirroring more. It was
Mhm.
difficult to it wasn't terribly difficult to get back into, like, what happened in 9, and, that was, like, all about the side of the high towers and the greens, and, we're back now to the red and blacks, which representing, so you know how I feel. Um, but, yeah, I kind of wish I would have been
Neutral.
able to yep, neutral, good for you, good for you. I, I can talk about the show neutrally, but when it comes to how I feel, I'm pretty settled on who I think is in the right and wrong. Um, but yeah, so I wish I'd gotten to see the episodes closer together because I think that would have been really impactful.
Yeah.
And it
It
was
would
difficult to kind of like feel that tension because you
right.
obviously have 2 episodes where entire sets of characters are intentionally left out because you're not telling their story right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I agree. It definitely, like the best of Game of Thrones, this series, the season, kind of calls for rewatching. I think it would be
mhm,
interesting to see in a rewatch how this flows, really how the transitions between all the different actors switching out and stuff works or
mhm,
doesn't work. Um, so yeah, and what we've missed, thing foreshadowing we've missed and such. So
right. Yeah,
um,
'cause, this episode does have a lot of callbacks to early parts of the season. I mean, to get right into a couple of events, there are moments that directly echo, I think, episodes 1 and 2. Um,
yes,
you know, we have Renice coming, flying directly from the Red Keep to Dragonstone to just drop bombs on Rhaenyra and Daemon and tell her, her father has passed, and Alicent, who, they were just reforging a friendship, has decided to decisively turn her back on that and crown her son king. Um, despite obviously knowing that for in Rhaenyra's mind that Viserys had chosen Rhaenyra as his heir. So there's a whole like friendship repudiation there, um, that just sends Rhaenyra into complete overdrive and unfortunately triggers an early labor and a preterm birth and a tragic loss of an infant. And we have a funeral scene there that directly mirrors exactly what Viserys encountered in episode
yep,
1, the burying of his own premature child.
yep,
So that's a big call out right there. And then there's a later confrontation at Dragonstone, Daemon and Otto and Rhaenyra flying in on Cyrax that calls out for, episode 2 or 3, I think. So,
Yeah. Yep, on the bridge and stuff.
yes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I
no,
covered
I
a lot
liked
of
all that
territory
stuff.
there. Sorry to,
No,
jump
yeah,
around, but it was
all
just
those
like
mirroring moments were great. I
yeah,
liked that a lot. Mhm.
yeah.
It's,
I think it
'cause
was well
any of
done.
those times you can be made to think of, I think that it's important in adding to the feeling for an audience that you've really been through an experience. You've been through a lot
Mhm,
with these characters, and that's really important. And so going back to the beginning, it adds a weight. That's
mhm,
one thing I always thought about the Lord of the Rings. When you end sort of where you begin, you get to see the Shire again, type of thing, or whatever. Um, that's important because you then think of when you last saw the Shire, and you're like, holy shit, all this stuff that has happened.
mhm.
It's
Right.
crazy. How do you go on? Like, how is it, whatever. And so you have that sort of thing here. Everybody's been through a lot. Um, and yet we
Yeah,
end
and
up with the same kind of stuff going on now.
right, right. And I think good stories don't make you feel that starting and ending in the same place is just like pointlessly circuitous. Like you
Right.
said, it's a very like, a moment to pause to be like, when was the last time we were here? Like, look at how much has happened. This is similar and yet different. And
Yep.
I think that's key. Like you can't recreate things exactly because then your audience is left feeling like you haven't gone anywhere. But in these like echoing, mirroring moments that are just tinged slightly differently, like Rhaenyra going through this instead of Viserys, um, or even, like the revisiting of Otto versus Damon, on Dragonstone
Yep.
with Rhaenyra coming in has a very different feel as she's no longer, in her mind, and, depending on who you ask in the realm, no longer a princess, she's the queen now coming to treat on Damon's side with Otto rather than
Yeah.
to Damon with Otto. So it's very, very different situations.
Yeah. And I really like how it's sort of drilled home in this episode, including that bridge scene and later, how she has inherited her father's demeanor and temperament. Like the
Yes.
idea that, when
Yes.
we first see her and stuff, it's like, yeah, she's a kid and she's won't take any responsibilities, not doesn't like what's thrust
Mhm.
upon her, and all this stuff. But as she's grown up now, we found that like she's taken, and we're reminded of this more than once, that she's taken to ruling more in the vein of her father
Mhm.
than you might expect, and maybe she is rubbed off on her in some of the best ways.
Yeah, and I like that both. I think as a viewer, just I've talked a lot about how Patty Considine playing Viserys has been one of my favorite characters and my favorite surprises. I just hadn't known of him before, and I really think he just knocked it out of the park this season. So I love, as a fan of that actor, that Rhaenyra is now following in a kind of Viserys like path. But I also like it for her character, and I like the way that I see that come out in the show. And she's kind of bettering her character. She's taking like some important parts of Viserys, but bettering them.
Yeah.
She's very much um, measured and cautious when it comes to like this, decision about war. She's like, I have a higher duty. Like I'm not, just throwing away all of this peace and prosperity and stability because I'm angry or because I deserve to sit on the throne. Like that's not the most important thing. But then when it comes to her family and talking to Jacaerys and Lucerys, um, about getting them ready to rule, she's a little bit more present. She's like, I'm going to guide you. And she's like, my father was there for me. But I think we know as viewers, he was and he wasn't. He had some moments, sure, where he was very like hands on teaching Rhaenyra. And then he had some moments where he was just like, peace, I'm out. I'm really frustrated with you. Like, I'm just going to be absent for a while. So I think she's like kind of taking some of that to the next level with her kids. and it's
Mhm.
really great to see.
Yeah. Um, I agree. Um, and they did well with the moments. That's always a tough thing. Like someone else is chosen to be leader or whatever. And the difficult thing with then that power being recognized. And so how do
Mhm.
you respond? And so some of those moments were good. Like she approaches the really cool table, by the way. We should like
Yes.
invest and get that. Think about playing
Yes,
D
please.
and D on that.
Yes, please. Also, I want, like, perches for candles, like, rows of candles, so it all looks
Hmm.
like set aflame.
Yeah.
Baller.
Yep. Yep. It's like, okay, where do we stand? And then we get going, and Damon's right on it. He's ready for this. That's definitely the path he is expecting to go on. One thing I wanted to bring up, because we went by here a little bit. We talked about Renice coming in, warning them, Damon expressing frustration, like, why didn't you just torch
Yeah.
them all? And definitely, Ashley and I's thoughts, your thoughts as well, I think. Do we
Yeah.
find any issue with her decision to not? Like, are we good with her reasoning, or is there something more, or is it a plot device?
Sure. Sure. I think the answer is a little bit of both. I have here, like, I'm very frustrated with Damon in this episode. I'm very two minds about, like, basically every conversation and interaction he has. Because on the one hand, like, he is, I think, upset at Renice for not just, like, torching the high towers, because we were like, "You're right there. Like, do it. It's probably actually going to save the realm a lot of chaos if you do." Um so, yeah, and then on the other hand, completely separately during this interaction, I was like, Rhaenyra is obviously, like, going into labor right now, like, maybe be a little concerned about that? Like, maybe be like, "Oh, you okay? Wife who's having my
Right.
baby right now?" Um, so yeah, separate issue. But so to back to Renice, I think there is obviously a little bit of plot device, because if she torched all the high towers, there goes the Dance of the Dragons. Um, and you have to make it make sense somehow. And I think they do a nice job of Rhaenyra echoing her sentiments later. Rhaenys says, like, "This war isn't mine to begin. Like, I'm not going to be the person to strike the first blow. And, like, I don't need to spill the blood." And then later, Rhaenyra is like, "I'm ready for war. Like, I'm pretty sure this is what's going to happen. But I also am not going to reach out and strike the first blow. Like, if there's a chance that we can negotiate peacefully." And I think there's a nice job of at least, like, attempting to make that reasoning flow through from character to character, so we can at least find some believability in it. Now, am
Yeah.
I totally convinced? No, but you tried. You tried to, like, follow that through
Mhm.
in another character. So,
Yeah. I was wondering, does the character have other things like, it's a little uncertain of where she wants her loyalties to lie. Like she has a hatred for Rhaenyra and for Daemon,
yeah.
thinking they took her son. So, like, can we add this into the complexity? Like, she's given them one answer, but really there's an added couple layers. Like, I don't know what side I'm actually on. Yes, I was held captive by these guys, but they didn't actually do anything to me. And the other people that are, Rhaenyra, that's sworn to be queen, she's not great and I don't love her either. So what should I do? Like, can I stay out of this sort of thing? Thinking that in the moment, anyways. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think
um
that's one of the fun things about Renice, and one of the things I like about the actor Eve Best. She does complexity well, and Renice has a lot of competing thoughts and feelings all of the time. I mean, she's got decades long resentment towards Viserys and by extension Rhaenyra for, getting passed up. She's got extra resentment for Rhaenyra for being a woman, being chosen to be heir and queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and people actually like went so far as to bend the knee to her. I mean, now everything's in turmoil, but at least at the time, I
Right.
mean, she definitely had some feelings about that. Um, she's got feelings about obviously like the high towers who are coming in, locking her away from her family, her dragon. That wasn't great, but like you said, they really didn't do a whole lot to her. I'm sure she's got feelings about the high towers in the sense of like she does repeatedly say, "I'm loyal to what my husband thinks," and he declared for Rhaenyra, so like I do feel a pull to be loyal to Rhaenyra, not the high towers, even if like personally I'm sort of ambivalent about anybody taking the throne who isn't me. Um, and then she's got resentment towards her husband, Corlys. She tried to stay out of it a long, long time ago, and he was all like, "No, we have to keep pushing,
Yeah.
like keep reaching. I have my ambitions." And I think she feels bitter about that because it's cost, in her mind, it's cost her children. So she's got a lot of conflicting feelings at any given moment in time. And yeah, she's just continually, I think, trying to sort out where she's gonna land, who she's gonna side with, and this episode does a really great job, I think, of helping her finally declare for Rhaenyra through seeing how much, Rhaenyra has gone through in her short life, how much pain she's
Right.
experienced and suffering and turmoil, especially um, for the crown, essentially. She's lost already. Now, we haven't gotten to it yet, but in this episode, Rhaenys sees her lose children in the plural,
Yep.
basically because of being named heir. So there's no longer, I think, a shine to it for her, and no longer a why does Rhaenyra get rewarded and she gets this thing that I didn't.
Mm,
She's just seeing like the pain
mm,
and thinking like, so you are like me,
yep.
and I can stand behind you as a strong woman.
Yep. I
So
agree. I think,
it was a
she's
long like
complex.
roundabout.
Yeah, she's
But
complex. She has
but yeah,
layers.
she's a lot to unpack.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it might be part 2 just not having the stomach to torch someone else's children then. To torch all these people and end them right there, again, going through the stuff you've gone through yourself, and then you're gonna just off another mother's kids right there.
Mhm.
Um, easily, rational person could not have the stomach to do that. So,
Yeah. It does, as long as we're on, Rhaenys' children, I mean, Rhaenyra in episode 8 had said, "I swear to you, I had nothing to do with Laenor's death." Kinda makes me wonder if, like, at some point, there'll be a reference, a conversation, a slipping in
hmm.
of
I
something.
mean, if you really want to mess up this new
I
alliance,
know.
because Corliss is like, you have my ships, the full weight of our everything, you want to mess that up. Say, actually, your son's alive, and we just, I mean, look, he was happy to do it
Does it
too.
mess it up?
He's like, I don't. Well, the deception, and then the Corliss would probably jump right back
What
into,
are
see, the heir. I do have an heir to,
Yeah, he
whatever.
would, but, like, I can feel like we know from this episode that, like, Rhaenys wears a lot of the persuasion pants in this family
Sure,
because, I mean, a lot of the time, Corlys is like, "The thing," and she's like, "No, don't do the thing," and then he comes back around, he's like, "Ah, you were right. Like, I should've listened to
but
you. I'm gonna do what you wanna do," and she's like, "Actually, let's, like, do this new thing that I decided," and he's like, "Cool, yeah."
yeah, we get that, but we kind of get that finally now. Like, that was part of the issue, is spent years not doing what she wanted, in the sense that, like, we're,
Yeah,
for everything we've got, we're going to be seeking, power and stature. And for what? and she's now admitting finally when they've lost so much, you're right,
Right.
that's, and but then quickly, you're right, but then she's like, but right now we can't because we
Well,
have living
yeah.
heirs ourselves that they won't be allowed to live. It's not going to work out that way.
Right. I mean, I think I put this in my show notes. Corliss just is too little too late. Like the whole like let's stay out of it. That would have been great when Renice proposed that like years ago. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like it's way too late to be out of it now. Like she is correct in that. Like Bela, she already made this betrothal for Bela and Reyna to marry Jacaerys and Lucerys. So there's no way. I mean, and obviously, as we see in this episode, that these kids are going to be just like left to their own devices and allowed to grow up and become threats. So yeah, I mean, there is a real problem here. And if it does come to war, which everybody, I think, secretly or not so secretly believes it will, nobody's just gonna like leave Driftmark alone.
Right.
Like, nobody's just gonna be like, "You wanna be like Switzerland's, be neutral?" Like, "Cool. We find that totally fine. Nobody needs your ships." Like, no. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
just from like
Right.
a,
Yeah. Right.
even if they didn't have skin in the game, nobody was gonna leave them alone anyway. So
Right. Mhm. Yeah. Do you? So we see Rhaenyra trying to, firstly, the little bit of a play at her heart. Do you remember Alicent? You
Mm,
guys used to be
mm,
friends. And then
mm.
that kind of, she's like, okay,
Otto.
I'll have have my
Otto
answer
can
come
just
morning.
no, Otto can just fuck all the way off. I've said it so many times this season, but he really, really can. I'm sorry. That was just some manipulative BS.
But
And
does
if
it
Allison if I mean, I don't even know that that page came from Alicent or
right.
if Otto freaking stole it and just, like, decided to make a play or if Alicent did give it to him, but either way, you knew he was gonna use it in a very manipulative fashion. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, either way, it didn't seem sincere, and I was just like, "Ugh, gag."
Does it contribute to her staying her hand? Because she's in there, and that's an interesting conversation here. Is so we have this element of, you have this relationship with Allison, this emotional thing like that. But then also looking at the greater picture of what's my responsibility to the realm. And obviously, obviously Damon is not for it because he feels like he was shut out a long time ago for
Yeah,
things that he was deserved of. And
yeah,
if Rhaenyra is possibly seen through the fog to notice that maybe the more important things are her children and all of, High Rock, not, uh, you know, burning in the capital, everywhere in Westeros,
yeah,
just
yeah.
burning to the ground. That's valuable, but is it realistic as well? Like, I mean, do you take the offer? Is the offer reasonable? Like, what's
No,
the, why not?
no,
Why not?
it's not reasonable.
Peace.
It
Peace.
it
Everybody gets lands and titles, and we're all, you guys get
they've
Dragonstone or whatever. You get all the
no,
things.
they've already shown sneaky treachery, so there's no way to say that they wouldn't, like, plant them up in their respective castles and then be like, "Whoopsie, an accident," or, "Oh, Jacaerys as cupbearer was fighting in tourney," or, some sort of other act. There's no way, I mean, I would trust their word at all. They pulled all of this off without even giving Rhaenyra the simple courtesy of telling her her father died. So, no, there's no way I would trust the word of a high tower at this point to just be like, "Let me offer your sons, like, super insulting, sad positions as cupbearers." That's not even, like, a real thing. You know what I mean? There's no real responsibility there, there's no, like, weight and meaning to it. It forever places you below, it infantilizes you because it's a job usually done by a younger person.
Mhm.
So it's an attempt to put them in a very, you know,
Diminutive
it's an
position, yeah.
yes, yes, diminutive position. Thank you. That's the word I was really searching for actually. So yeah, I think this offer is total bullshit. And it's echoed and made seem all the more hollow by Otto's yelling at Rhaenyra like Aegon has the crown, which he doesn't. He has another crown. He has the sword, he has the scepter, he has all the
Yeah.
symbols of legitimacy, and you could just look at him and go like, so?
It's a good
Like,
point
I could
in
I
front of
could
an
but
audience, yeah.
I could put on a cape tomorrow. Would that make me, like a superhero? Would putting on oh, too soon, too soon. I can't do it.
You
I
say the
was about to
queen,
say
yeah,
like I was. It's so soon. But it is an enduring symbol of the English monarchy. So maybe I'm not tying it to the queen. But were I to put on, you know, the velvet cape, hold the scepter, the globe, or the orb, and be crowned, does that make me like legitimately anything? Or does it mean that I'm just wearing the symbols of this office? Like symbols don't
yeah.
mean anything without like believing in the person and believing in their ability behind it. I mean, symbols are just symbols.
Right,
Anybody can
but
copy them. I mean, think about how many, like, movie props and knockoffs are made of those things, like, we imbue symbols with power, sure, but at the end of the day, like, if you don't believe in the person behind it, it doesn't mean that much.
and
And
it
all of
does matter.
All of Otto's bluster to me was just, like, somebody basically trying to, like, shout at the world and, like, tilt at windmills and convince people, like, "I matter. This matters." The more you have to convince people, the less power you have.
I mean, it was wise to act so quickly and to have all these symbols presented to someone that is reasonably to the public an heir,
Mhm.
has a claim to the throne, has the blood, looks certainly more the part than, not than Rhaenyra, but than her kids, like seeing
And
the
just
line or
Sarah's, yeah,
whatever.
I mean, we all know
Yeah,
at this point they're, you know, sons of House Strong, and they do not have
yeah,
Targaryen features, it's okay.
right. So, I mean, to the general public, I don't know. Be interesting. What would happen? What would happen if um Harry was, like Charles was out of country and
Oh,
Harry,
oh, sorry,
uh,
you're going to
yeah,
the
the
actual English
English
monarchy.
royalty. Yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like I was like,
Who's
"Who am
named
I
Harry?
missing?" Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, "We have another, like, Jason situation." We have all these, like, cool ass names,
yeah, and
Rhaenyra,
then
Daemon
Jason
Viserys, and
Lannister.
then Jason and Harry over here. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
man." Okay, no,
yeah.
sorry.
I mean, what would happen
Present
if
day
all of a sudden
monarchy.
they like try to, give Harry all the objects and throw him in front of the castle there, and here's your new king. And then Charles shows back up. Hey, that was mine. I'm
They
not dead yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very similar situation, to be sure. Like,
Mhm,
that's a good as good as you're gonna get real world analogy. Um,
mhm.
as far as I'm aware, Philip and Elizabeth did not have any illegitimate or not illegitimate, but, I mean, Elizabeth obviously
Bastards.
didn't well, she didn't, like, remarry and have, like, a kind of half sibling,
Mm,
separate family, a secondary family. I apologize. I don't really know how to put that the best way. Because, Rhaenyra and Aegon are obviously half siblings.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I mean there's certainly ways that I think people can be convinced for certain, but I mean if say Charles wasn't Harry's father, if some other man were and he were just running around yelling like Harry has all the symbols, it means he's king. Like it just when you feel the need to like shout it like that at everybody, it just I feel like takes away some essence of respect and power because in my view, real leaders don't need to convince you with their words. They need to convince you with their bearing and their actions. And
Real
that's what leaders in my mind would do. Not just have people like run around being like, I am the king. I'm the king because I
real
dressed with the thing and I'm the king. You
real
know?
leaders, yes, but real rulers, not necessarily. Rulers are instated in a way, like when we talk about a monarchy or whatever, whereas
Mhm.
leaders kind of have to have the respect and, are granted the power that that the populace or their followers give them.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
population doesn't really give the queen or anyone their power. The royal family
well,
does. I mean,
but see, this is where it's becoming hard to carry on the analogy because I mean, the actual royal family in England is symbolic, and here we're
right.
talking, about a show that
Literal. Yeah.
there is actual leading to do.
Yeah.
You are actually the leader and have all the weight of actual political decision. So, yes and no.
Mhm.
That's
What do
that's
you
why
so
I'm struggling with the analogy there.
Yeah, I know it's like an aside thing, but if you feel like answering and you have an opinion on it, what do you think of like the symbolic monarchy? How do you feel like that is in terms of you know,
Mhm.
a system for them? Like what do is it obviously we're outsiders, so we don't have the same sort of look
Sure.
at it from.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's taken on a bit of a different light to me in um the wake of the queen's death because even though it was, it was and is symbolic, there's something about, you know, Elizabeth having been through so many historical events, and bearing witness and kind of, people did, especially like in the beginning when it was feeling less symbolic and less like, you know, of a touristy kind of draw or like, entertainment tonight or like who's wearing what,
Right.
when there was more investiture in her being like kind of a cultural leader. There was a weight to that position, and there was we need somebody to look to, and that's not always just going to be our prime minister. We need someone to help us with how we feel about things, not only the decisions we have to make as a nation, through our voting or through our voices to our elected leaders on like laws and policies and things like that. There was a, how do we need to feel about this, and how do we have the space to react? And I think she was someone, people could identify with, who in her earlier years, they felt a sense of empathy with her as she, was so young and just, kind of thrust in the spotlight, and there was like a real connection to a woman trying to find her way there. And then as she grew older, there was a comfort and a familiarity and she's been through so many ups and downs and she's still here, and so is the monarchy, that it's a very comforting thing to have and to look to. Um Now with that ending, I think there's kind of a reevaluation, and there's less, it's not Charles's fault necessarily. I think it was maybe going to happen with anybody regardless of who it was. Um, but yeah, there is a reconsideration, I think, in what does the monarchy mean, and do we really need it? Do we need it as much as we used to? Can it play maybe a diminished role now in our government? So
Sure.
again, long-winded,
Okay.
but
Yeah. No, sorry for this side, everyone that's not interested, but I was curious what your thoughts were there. So,
yeah.
um, and as we've talked before, how this show does seem to bear a number of resemblances to actual English history. Kind of
hmm
fun.
Yeah, I mean, it does actually. I was reading the story it's based on, in English history, and I know I had
Oh,
likened it a little bit to to one of Henry VIII's wives. It was like I was talking about Jane Seymour, his wife there, but it's actually like based on a different part of an earlier part of the War of the Roses. Um, so yeah, so it is inextricably tied with English history. George R. R. Martin's made that very clear. So,
Cool. Okay, so we we've decided now. All right, we're gonna um, we're gonna wait. We're not making the first move, and so the kids
mhm,
are gonna go be little envoys here to neighboring
yeah.
houses, and
I love that
well, that doesn't
Jacaerys
go
came
so
up with
well.
this.
Oh
I
yeah,
I love that Jacaerys is the one who was like, you shouldn't just like send messages, you should send us." It's like a really politically smart move. I mean,
yeah,
you're obviously leading to the fact that it doesn't end well, which it doesn't, but in the moment, it does seem like a smart decision to make to kind of like reinforce to people like, "I care about you, I'm reaching out, look, I'm sending my sons who are my heirs," you know?
right.
Jaceres has a point, dragons are definitely more effective than ravens.
But do you
So,
want to
yeah.
start with a threat? I don't know. It will be viewed
Well,
as a
there
threat.
but would it? I mean, it is kind of a threat, but it's like a I'm giving you the courtesy and respect of sending my heir who can like control his
Yeah,
dragon. Like he's not going to like start a war with one dragon. And I think Jaceres is right. The dragons are just like impressive reminders of like might
yeah,
and power and strength.
yep.
So, and it's just kind of like a reminder, like, you want to be on this side. Like, we
Hmm.
got, we got. So, yeah.
Doesn't work out so well for Lucerys,
No, no. Oh,
because
God. And I
his
knew it was coming.
in a pissing contest, he loses in every way, in like competency and confidence, in size and physical prowess, and then in dragons.
Yeah.
Um, so what are you gonna do?
I
Like you say,
mean,
we kind of
okay.
knew this was coming.
Yeah, I did know it was the second I saw Vagar, I was like, well, that's over. Um, But I do wanna just point out for Lucerys, for Luke, um, he does have, I think, one thing going for him, and that he is smart. I mean, he obviously knows that his dragon Arax is not going to beat Vagar. Vagar is a behemoth. But so then he's like, "Cool, maneuverability, that's what I've got. That's what I'll
Mhm.
use." So,
Right.
I mean, point to Lucerys there, you had a really great idea. You just did the really classic dumb move of thinking, I escaped. I'm going to take a breather in this wide effing open space.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
sweetie bear. Like, ugh.
Yep. He should have gone down into the trenches there, into the ravine or whatever, and
Yeah,
stayed there.
just
Just
wait it out,
hang
man.
out there for a while. Yep. He'll go away.
I am convinced that Aemon didn't intend to kill him at least at the
Right.
outset. I think
I don't think so. Yeah.
his shock and his genuine attempt to hold Vagar back.
Yep.
We see at the end when Vagar is like bursting out of the clouds and he's like, Vagar, no, no, no.
Hmm.
Um, I think there is some genuine distress there and some, I was really trying to kind of pay him back and
Yeah.
you know, get
Terrorize him.
even, terrorize him, bully him the way I was bullied, feel some sense of satisfaction that, he stole my eye and wasn't punished. There's definitely some retribution there, but death I do not think was on the table.
Yep. No, I agree. And
Doesn't mean he wasn't an
technically,
asshole, but he wasn't
right.
plotting murder.
Right. Technically, Lucerys had struck the first blow again unintentionally, but this is what you're gonna get. You can't.
Oh,
He
oh,
he
yeah.
threw some, blasted some fire at the side of him, to of
Well,
course no effect.
that was the funny part because he also said, "No,
Yeah, obey
Arax."
me. Yeah, he
Well,
didn't mean to do
yeah,
it.
and yeah, exactly. So, I mean, both of their dragons sort of took a little liberty
Yeah.
here and were kind of like, pardon the pun, fired up on their own. And so that
Ah,
sort of makes me wonder, like, fire. It sort of makes me wonder, about how this whole like, you know, let's use dragons plan is gonna go. I mean, Damon
yeah.
spends so much of the episode being gung ho on like, we have the dragons, we have the dragons, we have the dragons. We need to use them. Here's all the things that we have. It's like
Mhm.
this is kind of highlighting some of the unpredictability of sending dragons into war.
Well, you just know, yeah, when you're playing with fire, it, you're gonna have accidents. You're gonna have mistakes. You're gonna have more. It's like having tanks or dropping bombs. From a fighter jet.
Mhm.
You are you get casualties of war. You have issues with collateral damage, and the dragons will add that. They'll add a level of
Mhm.
uncontrollability and a level of collateral damage that you wouldn't have otherwise. And yeah, I,
Mhm.
I think it's at the same time. I mean, for the audience, it's interesting, and for what Aegon, right? Aegon, or Aemond. I always mix them up. Which one's the guy, the eye
So this
patch?
is Aemond.
Okay.
This is Aemond. Yep.
Yeah, Aemond is, like, I it'll matter for his character, but otherwise,
Mhm.
for no one else is gonna believe this was accidental. No one's
No,
gonna believe,
absolutely not.
"Oh, he struck first." No one's gonna believe that. No one's gonna believe I couldn't control my dragon and like, it's gonna be inconsequential other than to his
Right.
conscience and us as a viewer, knowing this. So,
Right, yeah, no, I mean, I think telling the truth, only, um, kind of diminishes him or makes things worse for him in other ways. Like you said, other than the fact that he would get the ability to express genuine remorse, unfortunately, no one's really gonna believe him.
right.
Um,
Mhm.
and that's both a product of the situation and I think how he's acted as a person. Nobody's really bought into like he's oh so soft and forgiving. Um, that's just not what he's displayed. But it's to his detriment in, you know, like so you couldn't control your dragon, so you're not like really a true dragon rider, or you're not a
Right.
good one. Like all the years that you spent without having a dragon, maybe that really meant something. Maybe you weren't destined to have a dragon, and this was just some sort of like horrible accident that Vagar accepted you. You know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
only diminishes like
Yep.
him as a Targaryen and him as a dragon rider. And then I
Right.
and then I think, going back on, like, I didn't mean to sort of makes him very, like, wishy-washy, like,
Mhm.
so you, like, killed somebody, but you didn't mean it, like, shouldn't you just, like, own up to it and mean it? Just, like, take
Right.
ownership? So, yeah, unfortunately, we don't get to see what he decides this season, but he'll have, the time that he goes back to wherever he goes to, whether it's the Red Keep, whether he tries to however unlikely, go to Dragonstone and try to, approach Rhaenyra somehow. Whatever he does and whoever he sees first, like he's got, a short amount of time to figure out how he's gonna report the situation.
Yep. Yep. Well, yes, that does bring us to the end of the season. I think if
Mm.
we were like Rhaenyra's waiting for someone else to make the first strike. This is definitely going to be seen as that, and
Yep.
war is for sure
Her
on now.
yeah, her
So,
her slow turn face definitely said like, "Welp, it's on."
yep, yep. I didn't know. I was half expecting a tortured scream, but this was good
Yeah.
too. Like you're done. You're done.
Yeah.
This is it. So,
Yeah, I think this this was a great opposite moment to play from the horrendous, stillborn birth trauma that we experienced, which was a very different way to lose one of her children. early in the episode. That was, I mean, to watch Emma Darcy's face was just agonizing through all of that. And that was the moment for, tortured screams. And that was the moment for, you know, just like the heartbreaking wail of, look at what all this has done. It's cost me my baby. And this moment was a way to see a grief of a different kind play out for her, you know? Um, so I don't think it had any less impact or any less meaning for her or for her decision not to scream. I think in a way this was just as impactful and just as horrendous for her to live through. And she showed it. She, being Emma Darcy, showed us Rhaenyra's pain completely convincingly and heartbreakingly in a very different way. So
Yep.
I've been one of Emma Darcy's biggest skeptics, but I think these moments have really showcased her talent.
Yeah.
Like, this episode was a real highlight for her.
Yep. For sure. So overall, in summation, here we have now a completed season of House of the Dragon.
Mhm.
Was it a successful season? Does it live up to Game of Thrones?
Ooh. Um, I definitely grant it success. Like, I think it was a very, very solid first season. I would give it somewhere in the solid B range, with higher or lower per episode, I think averaging out to just like a very respectable B. Um, I think there were terrific performances. I think there were really interesting plot lines. And just like they spent great money on dragons, and they gave us enough dragons. I mean, you always want
Yeah.
to see more just because they're so gorgeous. But I think it was the right amount for the first episode to, like, tease and tantalize, like, this is what we're leading up to, and obviously, like, future seasons are gonna be all out war involving
Right.
dragons, so we're gonna get a lot more of that. And I think it was wise maybe not to commit all that budget to something they didn't know was gonna, be well received or not.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think they took a gamble with House of the Dragon, and there were stumbles, but overall a solid enough storyline and solid portrayals that I think people are going to be excited about future seasons. I think this is something that people are going to be coming back to. Um, has it lived up to Game of Thrones at its height? I don't think so. There's something about the storytelling of Game of Thrones. There's something about the novelty of it, and just like the absolute perfect storm of cultural sensation that it hit, that I don't know that House of the Dragon will ever get to, but it's done a commendable job standing on its own while also standing on the shoulders of its forebear.
Right. Yeah.
So it's built, not taken away, and good job.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, after a
What do you
first
think?
watch, yeah, a first watch
Where
through, I
where
think
would
a
you
B
grade
plus
it?
is pretty reasonable.
Sure.
Um, e I'm tempted to go higher because I think that there hasn't been anything on television or on the movie screen that I've seen that has done fantasy, medieval fantasy this well since mid seasons of Game of Thrones
Mhm.
that I can think of. Maybe there's something else. Northman, different sort of setting, but I suppose, but just is
You're missing a big, there's a big circle gap here. Rings of Power.
Oh, Andrea. Oh, you jokester. Um,
I mean, they are in direct competition. They are in the
yes.
fantasy realm. I speaking as someone who's watched half of the episodes, I have not finished the season, but I mean, it is out there.
Yeah, it is out there. That is true. It does exist. um,
It has been released into
yes.
public consciousness.
Yeah, there's just a a competent vision and eye behind this show. And I think that's not super common right now. There's budget to be had, and it seems like it's well spent. This was a challenging season to make because of the recasts and the time jumps and all that stuff, and they managed to do that quite well. Definitely going through this season, I was fearful at points that things were really going to tank or they're not going to be able to, pay things off. But I ended up getting invested in many of the characters. None of
Mm,
them are bland. Um, and I didn't see where it was going a lot of the times. So I think that it's a winning formula, and it reminds me of how good television entertainment with a large budget can be. And I'm very excited for there to be more. And I'm okay with if there's a year or 2 year wait or whatever it is,
mhm,
perfectly fine. Give me time if I want to rewatch this again in a year and, you
mhm.
know, kind of keep that
Give you
going.
time to miss it.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much I did miss this type of show and this world and everything. Like when those, even when the credits, hit and the theme song, it's like, God, those were good years and there's a lot to live up to. And in a lot of
Mm,
ways they did, I think. So
yeah.
I was quite satisfied with the season and ready for more. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I can only hope, obviously we've all experienced the detriment that extra time had on the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones, but I mean, it feels like they really have learned a lot of lessons since those days, and I'm trying not to feel too much trepidation about the time between seasons and really just putting my trust into we're making this because or we're taking this time because we're making a next great season, not because we're about to go in and F it all up.
Yeah. Yep.
Ugh, it's hard, we've all,
Mhm.
again, pardon the fire puns, been burned before, but
Mhm. Mhm.
um I think having them come out with such a strong first season does speak volumes to their recommitment to great storytelling in this world, in this universe. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Nice.
Overall, great job, HBO.